computer. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the April 9th Sunday Tinderbox meetup. And around the world, we have some are celebrating Easter. So if you're celebrating Easter, happy Easter. If not, hopefully you're having a great Sunday. So we've got 4 of us today, and actually Bruce just joined us. Awesome. And we thought we'd just jump right in and get started. So typical Tinderbox format, for those who are watching it for the first time, we go around the room and we ask people that have not attended before to introduce themselves. We then dig into discussing any problems, topics, questions that people have about wanting to activate and effectively use Tinderbox as both a kind of conceptual tool, but also tactically, how do they go about executing some things? And then we dive into examples, concepts, theories, ideas that people are talking about. So I look around the room of 4. I know everybody. Everyone knows everyone else. So we don't need to, we can skip that part. So then let's jump into the who's got questions about what, if anything, of what they're working on. What projects are you working on? What questions are you working on? That kind of thing. We've got Mr. Anderson as well.
Well, this is not a problem per se, and it's not something I'm prepared to pursue at the moment. It's just an anomaly I've been observing recently with some of the more recent releases on exporting to HTML. I'm getting an extraneous folder export. That folders normally are part of the HTML structure. If I have a month of April as an archive, it's in a folder that it's in a note, a container for 2023, and each note under that is a container for the month, and then each post is an archive in that month. I normally just export the month as a page, but now it's also exporting a folder for that page as well, which serves no purpose, and I delete it, and to no ill effect when I upload to the website. But
Dave,
yeah,
is it an empty folder?
No, I think it has the month in it, the archive page. It exports both the page by itself as the former behavior that it always did, and it exports a folder with that page, with that month in it, and the name of the folder is the month. And typically I forgot what I was going to say, but so I just delete that folder and then upload, and everything's fine. But it's just it's recent.
Dave, this is a perfect use of our time today. So let's go ahead and share screen and see if we can reproduce what you're doing. And then I've got.
I don't know. It may have something to do with the way templates are organized now.
Maybe, or it could be something to do with your archive old stuff. So let's say we've got April, and then we've got an article or 2. I don't know if I can spell it right.
I do wonder if when you export, are you exporting just the page? So you're exporting, you're doing export selected note, are you?
No, export.
Right. If you export the document, it will export everything. What it now does is instead of showing you where it will go, it basically works out where it needs to be, replicating the structure of the source document. If you just export the page, it should just export that page, and you get to decide where it goes. I am wondering if it's generating a sort of phantom folder. I wonder if there's anything in the folder that is being exported, say via an include, that isn't actually becoming a page, but it is being exported, which is making Tinderbox assume that it needs to make a folder for the item that doesn't actually end up as a file, but does end up being used. That's an edge case that, off the top of my head, might occur. It's not something I've tested, but it might.
Well, let me add one more wrinkle that I now remember what I was talking about, is that on a day when I do more than one post, which isn't very often, but sometimes I do, on the second export as HTML, it doesn't export the folder. So I'm not really sure.
I can tell you why that's happening. So the reason why that's happening, we'll show it in a minute. But let's look for your Phantom thing real quick. So here I'm in April, and so I'm not seeing any Phantom folder. So it's
Right. I don't, you'd have to, I guess, again, I'm using my own templates. So it may be an artifact of the way my old, my
correct.
ancient file was constructed.
Correct. So I think the answer to your Phantom folder issue is there is a note somewhere in your path or in your templates that is looking for a directory, but there's no file to be placed in that, and so that's creating this phantom directory. That makes total sense.
Well, I think what Mark was mentioning, that the way I guess export now is structuring, it's looking for that folder as part of the HTML path name, URL path name. And so it creates that April folder. But those articles don't, April's an entire archive. There's just one document that's in April that isn't part of the container 2023.
No, understood. But remember, you may have buried somewhere in the templates themselves. There may be a macro and include some artifact string that's getting produced that you are not visually seeing anywhere in your note structure, but is being produced by the template.
Maybe so. I doubt it. Because I never used macros. That's why I asked about them the other day. And I don't really use includes.
Or
something
path,
else.
or path. You do use path. So if you have some hanging Chad path somewhere in there, that would do it.
So yes, but you mentioned that I do export the entire document because the main page, the index page, is an agent that collects that day's posts, and so those posts are connected, are posted, exported as part of the index page, and then there's an RSS note that just includes that day's entries as the RSS feed. So I do export the entire document, but each of the archival years and months are all HTML do not export. So many years I exported the entire document.
No, Dave, check this
I have
out
a
real
suggestion.
quick.
Since we have Mark B on the line now, I'm guessing that Mark stepped into the middle of it. Maybe just to summarize for him, Dave, what the issue is.
Yeah, again, I didn't wish for this to become the center of the focus. I was just pointing out that in some of the more recent builds, it started recently. I use the backstage builds. When I export as HTML, I get my normal, what I'm accustomed to seeing forever, export, but also getting an additional April folder with the April page inside that folder, which I don't need, and I've learned now to just delete it before I go to Forklift to synchronize between the server and my local archive. So something has changed in the way Tinderbox interprets my file. I don't know what that is. It's not a huge problem. It takes 2 seconds to delete it. It's not a big deal, but they're just pointing it out in case somebody else encounters some anomalies that they hadn't encountered before on HTML export, which I don't think a lot of people do.
But no, again, though, I think the key point here is my gut's telling me, and I think Mark Anderson's of the same ilk, it's not an anomaly in the sense that Tinderbox is doing something wrong. It's you probably have a folder there or a file or something in your template that you may not be aware of.
Yeah, perhaps misphrased it. It's doing something different.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering,
and it is by design because of the transition to WebKit.
I'm just thinking it may be if April is a new folder you just added, possibly what's happening is in previous ones you've made the folder and you've probably set it to export children so you can use the contents of the note, but to not export that folder. So that's a way you can have content you want to include in another note, but you don't want to export it. And I just wonder if you've left the sort of export this note on. So although the April note doesn't do anything, it thinks it's that's one thing off the top of my head without seeing the file might be the case, because it occurs to me if it's just started and you're just using sort of the April folder, you may just have added it to the document, and it's something you
How
have
do
to
we how do we share screens? I've tried. I failed at this the one time I tried it before. What are the buttons I need?
You click.
There's a green button wherever the toolbar is for your Zoom, which of course will vary on how many screens you're using. But on the main Zoom screen, there'll be a. Yep, we're seeing your screen now, or a screen. I don't know.
Good. Are you seeing this right now?
Yep, the nebula.
Tinderbox?
Yep.
Okay, let me go hide others. All right, so I haven't done a post lately. Let's do a post right now.
No, we're not seeing anything. We're just seeing your screen now if you're doing something.
You're not. What are you seeing? You're not seeing Tinderbox?
No, just the space background. How many screens do you have?
Just God only knows. Let's see. I hid others. Let me unhide other or show off.
Physical screens versus digital, right, Mark?
Yeah. So yes, that's what I mean. I mean, because for instance, I'm sitting in front of 3 screens here, and I'm seeing Zoom stuff on 2 of them. So it may be that you haven't shared the screen you thought you shared.
My iPad, maybe, I don't know.
So we're seeing a sort of space photo at the moment.
Okay, you're not seeing.
But no,
that's my
windows.
Yeah, but so I don't know what to do.
Well, not to worry.
It says I'm sharing my screen, but I don't know what screen I'm sharing, and I don't know how to change it.
So go ahead and hit stop sharing and click sharing again, and this time be conscious of which screen you share when you hit share screen.
All right. So well, the first, okay, so share screen. All right. So now it takes me to the Zoom window. Participants can now see your screen, and is there a thing here that lets me pick what screen? Oh, I see this. Oh, that's the wrong space photo. I don't know what the hell that is.
Oh
yeah, that's
space.
That's
always.
What's that?
Bruce here. He'll help.
We are at the final frontier. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, this is not going to work. So one day I'll have to do a one-on-one and just figure out how to work.
Well, anyway, Dave, one quick one to check, you can do offline is just look at the folder, because if you don't want to be exporting the sort of April structural container from Tinderbox as a note, you'll want to have that note in its export in the export inspector. You want to have that unticked so it doesn't export. If it has content inside it, which you are exporting, which is very likely the case, but you're probably including it into a composite page, you need the container, the container note to be set to not export, but to allow its contents to export.
All right, Roger, I just toggled the Zoom screen recording permission. I toggled it to off, and now Mac's telling me Zoom will be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. You can choose to quit Zoom now or do it on your own later. So I'm going to quit and reopen, and I'll see you guys in a second.
Okay.
Okay. What else do we have going on?
I have a question.
Oh, we got rid of that troublemaker. Good job, Michael.
Oh, God. So as I'm working on file X, I try to be really diligent about closing it out, because I have it through Dropbox, and I have it, I go between 2 or 3 machines. Every once in a while, it tells me it's already, opened elsewhere, you're out of luck. Which makes sense. That's what it should do if I left it open on another computer. So I just increment the version number. If it was Bruce 1, now it's Bruce 1A or something like that. My question, and then I just start using Bruce 1A from that point on. My question is, if I want to see what the differences are between the 2 Tinderbox files to make sure that I didn't leave an errant note behind that I forgot to save. Any thoughts about that? I can do it manually, screen side by side, and just go through it. And maybe that's the most efficient way to do it. But I'm just wondering.
So to
Mark,
understand, basically, you want the difference between the two files.
Yes. Mark, you're on mute.
Mark
Or
B,
you're-
not coming through.
I am on mute. Am I still? No, I'm no longer.
You're
Right.
loud and clear now.
Great. The first thing I do is I'd find out how many notes and words are in the two files. Because if you're lucky, it'll tell you either there's one new note or there are no new notes, or they're really the same and you've got nothing to worry about. Then there are a number of programs. BBEdit will do this, or there are better programs that are dedicated to the task, like Kaleidoscope, that will compare two text files and tell you the differences. Many of these are going to be inscrutable because they're going to be Tinderbox internals, but this will help you drill down to find which is the new note.
That's really helpful. So you said, aside from BBEdit, you said Kaleidoscope?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And otherwise, if there is a difference in the count of the notes, is there a way for me to see what the latest note was in one version versus the other?
You'd run an agent in your new file and say, every note created after such date.
And sort by date of creation.
Sort by date. And then
Last modified.
Yeah.
Okay, every last modified note.
So in other words, there are a lot of ways to do that.
What's that,
Actually,
Mike?
having an agent that shows you the 2 or 3 most recently modified notes is a generally good thing to have in a writing project.
You mean you were writing to the wrong note?
Oh, or what was I working on yesterday?
No, I like that. It's sort of slightly analogous to your comment about Readwise. A little bit of a refresher to get you back on track.
I mean, we have so much compute power at our hands. It's very easy to get lost in space when flipping around, and you forget you ever worked with a piece of software and you save it somewhere, Microsoft Word, and it gets saved in a folder you weren't thinking about. Then you go back to where you think it was, and it's not. Very irritating.
Thank you. Well, that definitely moves me forward on that. It just happened within the last week, so it's fresh in my mind. Fortunately, that doesn't happen much, but it happens once or twice a month.
Okay. All right, Mr. Rogers, want to go back to you?
Yeah, we can try this again. I've toggled it. I don't know. I don't know that makes any difference. We'll see. See, it comes up and says Zoom would like to record this computer screen and audio, which it opens system settings, and it was permitted before. I just turned it off, and it told me to restart it, so I did that. Saw it was off, turned it back on, came back. I don't know. Something's munged on my system, I think.
You're sharing. It's just that you seem to be sharing the wrong screen.
I only have the one screen.
Well, then that's a puzzle.
Yeah,
So in that case, we're seeing your background, but not the windows.
Right.
correct. And so when I go up here, there are 4 desktop virtual.
Can you switch between them?
am I?
There you go.
Yeah, you're switching now.
Yeah, okay, so I see the difference is you're sharing different spaces versus your actual screen. You
All
probably
right, am I in?
you probably
Where are
have some of the I don't know what Tinderbox calls it or what Matt calls it.
You want to hear it?
What? So you're still seeing us? I'm on my Tinderbox screen. I don't know what you guys are seeing.
We see the nebula.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, so I'm on desktop 1. That's the main one I use. Oh wait, let me there. I can close these, I guess. There, I only have one desktop showing. Does that look any different? Give it a second, I
You know,
guess.
it's funny. I don't know if others see it. There's like a tiny bar at the top that looks to me, what is that? The menu bar? Very
Yeah, I see the Tinderbox menu bar.
okay, but it's like 1/1000th normal size.
I don't know. It's just okay, but I think we're wasting people's time.
Okay.
Find out
Looks like you need a new computer.
where. No. This one cost a fortune.
All right. So what else do we want to talk about?
Of course,
Dave, you got a question?
Dave?
George, you're on. You're on.
Kind of fun to guess what people might be talking about.
Well, Mr. Rogers, while we're waiting for Dave to get his volume on, the other issue is what I found is if you don't preview a note before exporting, sometimes it won't export. Because if you've already created the export directory, Tinderbox won't necessarily export a note if it hasn't already been previewed. Because the way the new WebKit export function is working is it's actually kind of generating the export in real time every time you try to preview a note. So I've
not observed that, and I just did a test that I wanted to show you guys. And what, in fact, it is in the folder is that note. It's not the whole month of April. It's just that note. And on the inspector, for the month of April on the page, you just export the page. You don't export the children. So I don't understand why it would include that child in a folder, but it's okay. It's just a sort of not that big a deal. It's just something different. And as a step, I have to delete that folder because it doesn't belong on the server.
Okay. All right, Dave, do we have voice yet?
I think we do.
We do. All right, you're up.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a bunch. And I'm likely going to run into the same thing when I attempt to do a screen share with Zoom, but hopefully not. So let me just do a screen share and show you what I'm dealing with. So this is a quick and simple Apple script, and I've replicated it both in the very excellent script debugger application, and I've also implemented it in Bash in a function. And they, given that they're largely the same thing, were working well and identically, and it still works within the context of the script debugger. But now when I invoke it via a function in Bash, it no longer works. It throws an error. And the reason that I even wanted to bring this up is it was working before I think I upgraded to a Backstage build, and I'm wondering if that might have something to do with it. So really, I'm looking, I suppose, from Mark for confirmation that all is well in the build, and I'm not spinning my wheels needlessly trying to troubleshoot. So just to show you, here's Tinderbox. It's a blank note. When we run this, it's going to ask for a note name. I'll type test note, and that's it. Right? Simple, straightforward. When you click on the note, you could see the contents of the clipboard, and I've got the Finder show clipboard right here. So all is well, all is what we expect. Again, this one isn't rocket science. However, if I come over here to terminal, we can see this. I've got it up in Bash RC. I'm essentially grabbing all of the arguments from the command line into a variable called the note name, and just to sanity check, I'm echoing out the value of the variable note name, so we can see that all as well. So if I type NTN, the function name for new Tinderbox note, and I call this one sample mode, and now it's working. And I swear to God, it wasn't working 10 minutes ago. So I don't know what's going on, but this is a happy conclusion for me because it's happening. But it's very, very odd. It was throwing an error, and I couldn't understand the error for the life of me. And now I don't need to worry about it. Gosh, I feel kind of sappy, but here we are.
Maybe you fed the gremlin after midnight.
Some such thing. So let me stop sharing, and I apologize for the diversion.
Okay. Next.
One thing that does occur to me is that the shell is quite fussy about what appears in the shell on the command line. And you probably know this perfectly well, but I know it perfectly well. And once a year, I'll forget myself and put something that makes perfect sense on the command line, forget to quote it or something.
Sure. Absolutely. 100%. A lot of different ways to go wrong. And it's working like a charm. So what can I tell you? I truly appreciate the functionality. As an aside, I use iTerm and iTerm's floating window to pop up anywhere I am, and it's super quick and super easy to capture information in this way, literally at the speed of thought. You don't even have to get out of an app that you're working with. You stay in context. It's all good. So I appreciate the AppleScript integration.
Let me jump in and just say, my photo post failed on Tinderbox not too long ago, and with a 1701 AppleScript error, and didn't work. So I just ran one now to see if I could get that verified that it was 1701. It worked, so I can now post photos. So it's, I guess, while we're on with Mark Bernstein, it works. But you know.
Okay. So if we don't mind, if we can pop to one of my issues, I've been playing with it on the forum, and I just want to demonstrate it so everyone can see it. I'm not necessarily looking for a
Who
solution.
says you've got the podium?
I do for once, and I actually have a problem that I can't get resolved. So I'm gonna demonstrate it, and then hopefully maybe offline we can solve it. So and this was really a result of some work I was doing with Olivia, because we both teach and we've both been trying to figure out how to deal with our students that are not doing as well in the class as we want them to do. So the Tinderbox file we're building up here is basically saying, I've got some students that are failing. You know, they've got some assignments that they're due, and I want to tell them, dude, you got to get your assignment in, otherwise you're going to fail the class. So and again, this is all test work, but generally, so you can see what you're seeing here is I created an email template. Where are my templates? Where's the templates? Oh yeah. So we created an email template that basically what it does is it collects the assignments on the fly and then gives them that note. So if you go look at the template, it will say, "Hey Michael, how are you? I'm concerned about you. You're not doing the class right." I can go in here and change the due date. I didn't put it on this one just so we can see it. Due date. Let's say the due date is today. So I've got a due date on this note. So I go up here and I'm like, okay, all your homework's due today, right? And it's automatically collecting those assignments, creating a list, and letting me tell them what they need to do about that. And so there's a whole bunch of other automation I could do. Now here's what I want to be able to do. With script editor, I can go ahead and run my script, and what that does is it automatically pulls up MacMail and produces the email for me. And so now I can go ahead and email the student directly and say, and later I can populate the subject automatically and stuff like that. But right now, I just want to be able to send that email. What I'm trying to do is run that exact same script, but from Tinderbox. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm running a stamp, and I'm saying, go grab that script, pass it to my OSA script, And then I'm also having to drop it on the command line so I can see what's going on, or in a text file so I can see what's going on. So when I try to run it via stamp, what ends up happening is I get this, right? And again, I've been messing with the code, so it's a little bit off, but I'm either getting apostrophes are being thrown or can't find file. So if anybody has any thoughts on how I can successfully pass an Apple script to Tinderbox, I'd appreciate it. Comments, thoughts, ideas. Let me because I'd messed up that script so much. Let me go ahead and here do this. Paste that in. I suspect now.
Michael, can you show there? Is that the URL that it's pulling from?
Well, that's the URL for no, that's the email that's getting generated. So part of what the script is doing is it's generated the email and then automatically place the email that was just generated here, so I can then go later and look at it again.
And are you saying it's not finding that file?
Right. So here's one of the errors I'm getting. So when I repost it, so I replace the action, when I run the script from script editor, it works perfectly. If I take that exact same script and paste it into the into here, what it does is it's throwing errors at these apostrophes.
Yeah, it's feeding the Apple script to the shell.
Yeah.
The shell is being asked to interpret the Apple script.
So we don't have to deal with it right now, but if anybody has a comment for me, I would appreciate it later. No, but do you have a comment now, or should we park it for offline for later?
I park it offline. I think that this is doing something the hard way.
Okay. So if you have some thoughts, if you can shoot me an email or post it on the forum. But
yeah.
At least now you've seen what I'm trying to do. So I would appreciate that. Okay. Anybody else have anything else? I've got another demo I can give you all if you've nobody else has any other thoughts, comments, questions, ideas.
Michael, let me just add a little bit, just because it seems to fit nicely with what we were talking about just a moment ago.
Perfect.
Another approach to this would be to, you've already got the template being generated in Tinderbox as a Tinderbox note. You could then select that and use a script like the one we just saw to switch to mail.app, make a new email, and paste the contents of the clipboard into the new email, which gets you 85% of the way to finished without having to detour to this shell at all.
Okay. I heard words come out of your mouth. I can't say I actually understood them.
Okay, I'll write it up on the forum.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'm part of the, I only understand about a third of the Apple script that I stole from somewhere online. So I'm stumbling around in the dark. So yeah, if you could write something up, that'd be awesome. Okay. Anybody else have any other thoughts, ideas, comments, questions? Otherwise, I can show you something else really cool or fun that I've been playing with. We want to see something fun? Okay. Let's see. Let's show you something fun. All right. So as you all know, I've been working on producing an event in May for the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. And what I've been doing here is now what I've been trying to do is figure out, look at all my speakers and figure out specifically, like, go ahead and delete this so I can show the whole thing. So specifically what I'm trying to do is figure out, I've got my confirmed speakers for sure that are locked in. I've got my so other speakers I'm talking to, and I have some that are prospects and things like that. Now the interesting thing about this is some of the speakers, like here, you're seeing that person's name showing up twice. Well, the reason why that person's name showing up twice is they're showing up twice in the 2 different times in the agenda. So Michael Becker speaking here and Michael Becker speaking there. Similarly, Rebecca's going to speak twice in the agenda. So when you look at Rebecca here, you're seeing Rebecca's on the evolving role of KYC panel as well as on the organizational identity panel. So this particular speaker note is different from that particular speaker note, but they're both related to this note called Rebecca. And I've been dealing with some sponsors, and they've been wanting to get some statistics from me on what's going on with the event. And so what's interesting is this is an alias. And then if I go and I click to show new original, you'll see under this session, she's giving a keynote in this session. So this is an actual note. It's not an alias. But even this note is really not the Rebecca note. If I go here, you'll see what's happening is Rebecca is actually being linked to the actual note where Rebecca exists. So, and so you all know my strategy of having a resource folder of like atomic ideas or atomic notes. So the reason why I'm doing this is I want all of the information related to the individual Rebecca. And so I can pull that up. That can pop up this way. I can also pull this up, and that allows me to go like this. So I can see her bio and I can get the other information about her. So what that allows me to do is I've got an atomic note called Rebecca Johnson, who I now am, and based on my action code, when I put her name here in person, my action code behind the scenes automatically creates that person, Rebecca, if she doesn't exist, automatically links this note to Rebecca once that note's created. And then what it also does, and I'll show you the script real quick, what it will also do is something kind of fun, is it will, library. What it also does is it not only populates that, but it also then pulls up into that speaker note all of the relevant information I need to know about her. So that way, when I change the note Rebecca, the core atomic note Rebecca, regardless of wherever she else might be speaking in any one or more of my events, her information is going to automatically propagate up throughout the chain and get updated. So that's what's happening with that. Now, here's the interesting thing that I encountered last night, in that I was trying to because of that propagation. Oh my God, come on, where'd it go? All right. So what I was trying to do is rationalize the seniority of titles of the speakers. And what I wanted to be able to do is say, so, you know, Michael Becker's a CEO, Dario's a CEO, both of them are the normalized seniority of CXO. So the issue I had is I couldn't update the alias, because the alias is going to get automatically updated from the atomic note to her primary speaker note and then into the alias. So updating the alias would exist for a couple minutes until up in such point in time that all the action code went and re-updated the aliases with all the associated links. So what I needed to do was find a way on how to, but also what I wanted to do is I didn't want to have to, you know, open up Michael Becker, for example, as an alias, go to Michael Becker's speaker note, go like this, then open up Michael Becker's note and then modify the atomic note. That was way too many steps for me, and I'm too lazy to have gone through that process. So the solution I ended up coming up with was this, which I think kind of works. So, okay, so here we are, here's the Michael Becker note. And what I'm now able to do is, if I want to say, and later, and Mark, you've seen this on the backstage, I'll automate this with agents and all this, but I had to get it done last night. So what I did was manually, I went through and created a series of seniority stamps. And one of the things you'll see here is I'm saying seniority person ID equals senior leadership. So one of the things I started doing in my stamp was I said, make the person ID equal to this note's ID. So the atomic note, Michael Becker, the atomic note, Rebecca, his or her ID note is passing up to the related speaker note, which then obviously passes through to the agents. So that way, when I look now here, you'll see I have an agent or an alias called Michael Becker. The person ID related to this agent is actually the original note, Michael Becker, and not the proxy speaker note. So now what I can do is I've got that, since I now have that original note ID, if I go ahead and apply this stamp senior leadership to Michael Becker right now, what's going to happen is I will have now changed Michael Becker's original note to senior leadership, not CXO. And then that will then, when the agent updates itself, that will obviously all the way propagate all the way through. So if I show you having done that, let me go find the Michael Becker note here so you can see that. So if I go here and get to the actual original, oh, I think it already worked. Sorry, my dog is snoring up a storm underneath me. Yeah, so you see here, the alias Michael Becker has now been changed to senior leadership, because I use this method to be able to, because I know the original notes ID. So I tell the original notes ID's seniority to update with this value, and then that propagates up through the linking and the aliasing strategy. So that was really, really cool for me. And it frankly has saved me an unbelievable amount of time, because now I can quickly do a quick sort. And often too, I've got literally in some of these notes, I've got 1,000 people. I don't want to be manually going to the 1,000 people. With this strategy, I can just go, let me grab the 26 that matter for me in this context and manually update them. And it was a lot quicker for me to manually update 26 than try to figure out some arcane tagging, agent analysis method to get, that seniority application applied automatically. At some point, Mr. Bernstein, though, I would love to find, just like we can do taggers in name and text, you've given me some alternatives I need to experiment with, but if I could do like, tagging off of titles, so every CEO becomes a CXO, that kind of thing would be really cool. So that's one thing that I figured out last night, which is super neat. So I can go ahead and update. Well, it looks like I've been messing around with this a little bit. Let me fix this one. So I'll just go and update that one better. Get Michael back to a CXO, and then I'll show you the next cool thing that I figured out. Okay, so again, and this is really off of what it's similar. It's a continuation of what we were learning last week about using node IDs and using designators, parent, guardian, specific note, path, ancestor, children, etc., to be able to do that kind of action code magic for automagical interaction. So then I said, okay, now what I need to be able to do is, now that I've normalized all of these seniority titles in my speakers, now what I want is statistics. And so if I go down here and I say, okay, I've got all of these speakers, and let me pause right there. Does anybody have any questions, comments about that before I move on to the next cool thing that I figured out? Or any round of applause, or that's cool, or am I just boring you all to death?
Okay. Michael, I just wanted to confirm, are you actually rewriting functions with actions?
Am I actually rewriting functions with actions? What do you mean by that?
At one point, you briefly showed us a couple of large functions.
Yep.
And one way that this could be implemented is that when you add a new category, or that you add a new line to the appropriate library functions. If that's not what you're doing, that's great and probably sensible. But if it is what you're doing, it's really cool.
Well, that is what I'm doing. So when I want to go and update this user, I'll just go and drop a new link function here into the primary function, and then that propagates everywhere.
Right.
So basically, I've got my atomic note whatever that, and I've got multiple versions of this functions depending on context, right? So the whole idea is I've got this core atomic note, depending on context and depending on type, on how that note is associated with the other notes that, both the actual proxy notes, which are real notes but proxying to the core atomic note, or aliases, either related to the atomic note or through a proxy. They're all being able to, through this function, be able to propagate up through the entire process. So it's taken me a while to get that abstraction logic down, but now that I've got it, I don't even do it without, I do it without even thinking now. It just happens. So it's really, really, really efficient. So that's one of the things I've been doing. The one thing that you and I talked about a few times, Mr. Bernstein, while I have you on the call, I would love to be able to pass this through as a variable. Right now, within the inbound speaker, the speaker type is hard-coded. You know, we've talked about that.
Yeah,
before.
but the new syntax, use the new syntax and you'll be happier.
I don't know the new syntax. Maybe you can show me in this.
Yeah.
Show me.
It's in your email.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's what's going on there. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, which is super neat, and this actually goes all the way back. The core concept of what I'm about to show you goes back to the original Tinderbox way. And Mr. Eddie, before I move on.
This is spectacular, beyond my experience level. I know that's what the end objective is, but there was the promise or the hint of a real simple. How do you start with some simple notes and put them into Tinderbox? That was posted on the forum, and I voted yes.
Oh yeah. Which one was that one? I think that was the views one. No, let me finish what I'm talking about. Find up the link, and then we'll move to that topic. Right. So that's a great pivot from where I'm talking, because again, I get this is a little like out there for a lot of people, but it's fun for me to show you. So and these are real life, like, you know, I'll be later when we're done with this call taking the statistics that I'm making right now to go sell somebody hopefully 10 grand by tomorrow. So this is like trying to make money with Tinderbox. So now I've got all my speakers, and now the issue is I want stats. Right? How do I get quantified data about what's going on with my program? And what are the stats I want? I want to know, and specifically, I want to show you the money versions. I'll show you the stats of the speakers. So I want to know the seniority of the event. I want to know how many speakers I've confirmed versus how many speakers are unconfirmed. I want to know the breakdown of the individual seniority of the speakers. And let me show you how I went about doing that. So I create, and again, I could easily have, I should later do this in a function, but this was also me just needing to get the job done quickly. So I just hammered it out. So there's more efficiency that can be had here. And, you know, praise be to logging, which I can demonstrate in a minute as well, because there were some things that just were not working. And the second I logged it, it was obvious. I'm like, oh my God, okay, that's what's happening. So let me walk you through this, and then I'll show you how this is all going to automatically come up. So I'm saying, okay, first clear out the log. Then I'm now saying make a set and go collect all of the confirmed speakers. And now what I want you to do is now make a speaker search. So go collect all of the speakers whose person ID is 0. So the issue with that is I've got about 12 to 15 placeholder speakers that I've not yet associated with names. And so none of these notes actually have a person. And this is one of the discoveries that I got because of the log. I couldn't figure why the numbers weren't working. And then I realized in the speaker set, there was an ID coming through as 0. And then I'm thinking, well, why would I have an ID as 0? Because there's no person associated with any of these notes, because I've not populated that. So that's where the beauty of logging comes into play, and the tutelage of Mr. Mark Anderson, who has beat this kind of stuff into my head. So so now I know how many speakers I want, but yet have not even discovered a human being to be able to fill that spot. And then I'm like, okay, go give me, and again, the naming's off too, because I'm just trying to get like speaker other. I don't really know what that means. I'll define it later, but this is just getting it done. The idea is give me all of the not confirmed speakers. So now I've got the 3 core pieces of lists that I need. And the other thing too is I need a set. And the set here is really critical, because like Rebecca, Michael Becker, Stephen Wolf, they're speaking multiple times in the session. And so what I want is a count of individual speakers, not the duplicate of Rebecca speaking twice. I want the count of individual humans, not the proxy speakers that are the same human. So with that in mind, that's why I'm doing this as a set, because when I do it as a set, I don't get duplicate person IDs. Any duplicate person IDs get stripped out. Now on the list, I want duplicate personal ID, and this is the other insight I had, is I originally had that as a set, and so I was getting, I have 12 zeros, but when I made it a set, I only got 1 back, because the set deletes automatically all duplicates. But if you have a list, it allows you to have duplicates. So that's what's happening there. And then I've got another set that's giving me my others. Then I go ahead and create a person 2, which I think I don't need anymore, but I'll leave it there. I think it's just an appendix now. And so then what I was doing is, okay, now what I need you to do, again, all of what we learned about last week using the designated capabilities, take the speaker confirm.each, process through that, and go grab me the actual seniority. So remember up here, what I'm grabbing is node IDs. So I don't actually have the information I want yet. What I do is that I have all the note IDs for where the information I want is. So now I need to go get the information I want. So I go and say, okay, go grab the seniority for each one of these node IDs. Now create me a list called speaker confirms. So now I've got all of the node IDs, and now I'm going to sort it. Then what I'm doing is I'm saying, now go count the speaker confirms. Now go count the speaker others. Now go count the speaker searches. So now I've got a number of every one of the confirms, others, and speaker searches. And now I'm saying, give me the total number of speakers, which is the count of speaker search and speaker other. So now I have all the speakers I'm wanting. Then give me a count of each of the individual job types. So give me the count of all of the occurrences of CXO, senior leadership, solution leader, and subject matter expert. Now, this one, I'm embarrassed to say it took me a bit. I was using count instead of count of, and for some reason it wasn't working. And as soon as I turned it to a count occurrence of, everything worked well. And so then I stopped bothering about how to make that work. Then what I start doing is I want to go and now count my percentages. So I'm saying, give me the overall seniority, and take the CXO count by the plus the total leadership count by speaker times 100, and that gives me a percentage. So now I have, for me, the overall seniority. I need a target of, when the event is done, my target is 70% of all of the speakers need to be senior leadership or CXO or above, or senior leadership or CXO. Then how many CXOs do I have? And by both raw number and percentage, how many senior leaders, how many solution leaders, how many subject matter experts. Then I'm just logging down here to figure it out. And then once so now I've calculated all my numbers. So now I go through, and again, there's probably more efficient and easier ways to do this, because this is just a quick hack on Easter morning saying, so I can get this done. I'm saying, okay, now take the text, put in a line break, take the speaker pool, and enter in a label called speaker pool count, get that number, get the identify it out of total number of speakers, confirm speaker count is this, overall CXO plus senior leadership percentage account is that, and then go through. So now that I've done that, I can simply go like this. All right, and watch it break. Come on. Did I just break something? I did all of this wonderful, come on. There you go. All right, so there's that one. And then if I go like this, there you go. Okay, so now I got speaker count total is 36, identified out of a total of 55 speakers. Confirmed speakers is 23. Overall CXO to senior leadership speaker is 38%. Confirmed speaker count by seniority is 16, CXO 70%, senior leadership is 5%, 22%, solution leader is 1, and subject matter is 1. So this gives you a really, and then on top of that, I then can easily go through here, as I was showing you earlier, and this just becomes the incredible value of Tinderbox. I can now come up here though and say, but yet from a Word document output perspective, here's the actual agenda, and here are their photos, and here's like this guy's 100% confirmed in the last time I talked to him, those kinds of things. So what I'm basically demonstrating here is you can use Tinderbox to do qualitative note-taking, note analysis, note management, but then you can turn around and use Tinderbox to also do quantitative analysis, quantitative measurement, quantitative interaction. And the beautiful thing about this, it's all happening in one app. And I can output it all in any direction I want. PowerPoint, Word files, Excel files, doesn't matter. So for me, this is like the pinnacle comprehensive of what Tinderbox brings to us. So thoughts, ideas, reactions, comments, questions? Smoke and crack, don't like it. Bueller. Suggested recommendation changes.
I just was going to loop back, and you were saying you were having a difference with count and count occurrence of. just to clarify, count is the number of, basically is the list, the length of the list, and count occurrences of is saying for the literal string that I'm giving you, like CXO, tell me the number of times that this particular string occurs in all the values in the list. So they're doing discrete things.
Yes, and that's what I realized that I had to switch it. Yeah. But again, it's that perfect example. I wasn't getting what I expected. And so then I went back to ATB ref, and it's like, okay, well, what other function would get me what I expect? And that's how I figured it out.
I mean, that's where using very quick and dirty logging really helps. You know, if you get 5 and you expect 3,
yeah,
at one level you know you got the wrong answer, but it gives you some hint as to, you know, is it too? Am I getting too many things? Am I getting too few? And that's often useful in going back to the sort of references. So, well, okay, so you know, what count am I getting if it's not the one I expected?
Right.
So I'm counting things I didn't think would be there, or that kind of thing. So that's where the logging also helps.
And then the other nice thing about this too is when you're working in output software like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all of that, especially when you do this multiple times and multiple events and multiple reports, it's like terrible amount of manualness all over the place. So for example, you see that extra space I've got here. Well, I can just go in here and, you know, and later I'm going to put this into a template and automate it. But for now, I needed to get this done as a one-off because I've got a tactical thing I need to do. So you can see I can just instantly fix that. And now that I fixed it in this one place, it's forever fixed for wherever I'm going to intend to use this again. And so now that this is done, I'll drop this into a function later. And then I'll be able to repurpose this across every event that I use for the next however, until I get some other bug up my panties that wants me to do it a different way. But then I'll be able to copy that and do it a different way. It's just terribly exciting variations that can happen off of this.
So while the hood's up, line 3, leadership, you've got a typo in it.
Of course I do.
No, I'm not. That wasn't a snippy comment, but
Yeah,
I know. Do it now while it's in front of us.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, should we? Because looking at the time, should we try and go on to the generalizing?
Well, what do you guys think of that though? Pretty neat.
It's exciting. I think it's a spectacular demonstration of some of the capabilities of the product. It's so deep and so flexible that if you've got a problem and you look about solving it creatively, you can make a lot of things happen. It's neat to see the solution pull the data out of itself and then present it for consumption elsewhere. The time saving potential, as you say, is vast.
Yeah. And the other thing I really like about it too, others will say, so there's some non-Tinderbox acolytes that I interact with. Or not, that's probably, they're not acolytes yet. I'm on my conversion missions, and they're like, oh, but it's just taking so much time. You just wasted an hour writing that script or chasing down that account versus a occurrence of. And I'm like, okay, you can see it that way, but then I'm going to ask, well, how many hours or years of your life have you wasted messing around with formatting in PowerPoint or Word or chasing down headings in Word? And at some point, you're either going to invest the time upfront or you're going to invest the time downstream. The difference is investing the time upfront means everything downstream gets automatically fixed. Whereas when you're doing the edits and downstream, you're going to keep getting the same problem.
I remember you had mentioned to me when we were discussing the notion of my clients own my output, but I own the input. That really resonated with me. I love it. This is about focusing on input methods, on getting your process as automated and streamlined as possible so that the types of recurring needs to generate output are being handled and accumulated, and it just gets better and better and better. The output needs are always going to be there, but now you get that output much less in a much less painful way. I should say you're just going faster and getting better because you're accumulating process on the inside, and the output is
and you're learning about the data, and you're getting, you know, like Mark Anderson talks about, this whole process gets you closer to your data, you know. And again, I'm really glad you brought that point up too. Is, you know, as I think about this, if I were working in output software like an Excel spreadsheet or something like that for the board meeting my client is having for this event on Tuesday, I'd have to hand them the entire spreadsheet, and then they'd own everything. They'd own all the speakers, all the work I've done on profiling those speakers and the details, all of the topology of, you know, is a CFO and a CRO both a CXO? And the answer is yes, but this goes back to David Eddy. I mean, even that's not necessarily a simple answer, right? Because you do call it executive leadership, senior leadership, C-suite. I mean, there's names for all of those kinds of ideas. And again, if you're working in Excel, dealing with those parameters of C-suite versus CXO versus executive leadership gets really messy really quickly. Whereas in Tinderbox, you can do it very simply. But more importantly, and again, in this context, what the client needs to know is 36 speakers. They don't own the asset of the hours and days and effort that I took to get me those 36 speakers. That the asset of those 36 speakers is frankly my intellectual property.
Sure.
They get to have the answer of 36. That's what they paid for. And I just think it's incredibly important for people to understand that.
Well, thanks for sharing. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And if there are any other thoughts, comments, questions, I can answer them. If not, we can move on to Mr. Eddy.
What?
You were asking about, so how do I get notes in?
Right. Well, you posted on the forum, which I rarely visit, and I voted yes for a very simple display and of walkthrough of.
Oh, the views. So that was a little different. That was Christy asking not about how do I get notes in, but once notes are in, how do I use the different views?
Yeah, it's been reposted into the chat.
Yeah. So we certainly can go down that path, and we can make something up quickly if we want. I got to find the right file to do that. Is that something we want to pivot to?
Sure.
And David Eddy, CXOs are not SMEs. CXOs are leadership, CEOs, VPs, all of that. I find often that those people, while knowing they know how to navigate the politics of the business, they don't actually know how identity management works.
They get insulted.
How privacy works, and very different. They don't actually. For me, the subject matter expert is the person that can actually do it. So that and what I find is more often than not, 50% of the C-suite or more can't actually do it. They know who can get it done, but they don't know how to do it themselves. You get the rare one that actually can do both.
They're talking heads. That's their job.
Well, that's their job, and they're paid for it, and it's incredibly valuable. And they can navigate the politics of a large multi-billion-dollar organization to get something done, and that's very powerful. But they're not going to be the ones that can actually log in and configure a system. Nor should they. It's not a slight. It just is. Okay. So what do we want to do? So we want to play with views a little bit. Just going through here. Oh yeah, thank you for that, David. That's great. Okay, let's play with views a little bit, and let's start with a blank file. Yes, Mr. Bernstein, please.
Yeah, I've thrown together a very quick and dirty file, which
Yay.
may save us a little bit of time. If I can only, here we go. Okay. If I have the correct file, you now have a window which has A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. Okay, we've got the right file. And this is our friend, the map view. We can move things where we want them. We can add things by double clicking, and there we go. We link things by dragging the link. We all know this.
And Mark, if you could pause there too, and you can create a container by, say, dragging K onto D. Or that way, or E, yeah.
And we drag things out of the container by dragging them out or dropping them back in. Resize, we can drag the interior by grabbing the interior. So that should be fairly familiar. If we go up to view and we select the outline, and drag my toolbar out of the way. So here we've got the outline, and we can collapse or extend things if we select a note, we can make a link. This isn't as nice as linking in map view because it doesn't all show us the links as we make them. Okay. Chart. We have same information really as we had in outline view, but presented in a way that emphasizes structure more. It's actually in some ways easier to edit than outline. It's a not much loved view. Also notice that we can do all sorts of things with the chart. That's not particularly useful. We can have a vertical chart that goes down instead of up.
I did not know that. Awesome. So that could be like a quick and dirty org chart.
Yep.
Nice.
Org charts are conventionally, we can have them, we can make things wider or narrower. We can space things out more. We can change the way we draw connecting lines from or right angles to direct lines. So there's quite a lot we can do, and we can collapse sections of the tree. So that's nice.
Do links appear in that view?
No. We've seen timelines before, and I haven't set up any times here. So timeline is really boring. Everything has no assigned time at the moment.
If you were to drag a note from the left to the right, though, you can automatically set a time, no?
Yeah. But still, lots of links and no times makes for a boring timeline. We'll do timeline another day.
I've got a
Tree
great
map
timeline at the end I can show you. It's really cool.
Tree map. Each note becomes a box. And so here is A. It contains notes 2 and 1. B has nothing. C has 2 and 1. E has F and G and K. Tree maps are designed to put as many notes onto the screen as we can get onto the screen while still showing the hierarchy. They're much more efficient in their use of the screen than or outlines or charts.
Hey, Mark, one question on that. Is there a way to get a logo into the tree map view?
No, but you can always copy the tree map view and then drop it into Acorn or whatever you use for editing and put a logo on it.
What is Acorn? Not heard of that.
Okay, tree map expressions. Tree maps can be colored in interesting ways to give weighting to. In this tree map, each note has a weight of 1, but we can have notes have different weight, take up different amounts of relative space. So in the tutorial example, I have an elaborate expense report where the area of a note is proportional to the expense. We can assign the color and infographic style based on some other variable. We can adjust the border color. I've set the borders in this one to black since light on light borders aren't very visible. You can limit the depth. If things are so full up that you've got tiny little subpixel boxes, you may not want to be that cluttered. Tree map views are underutilized. Okay, attribute browser. This needs its own day. Badly underutilized view. But we can sort by, oh, well, that doesn't help us at all.
Mark, can you define what 0 to 0.1 is?
We are looking for some attribute. Let's name. The attribute browser is now studying the attribute name, and the container is the entire document. This is currently 13 notes. We have 2 notes named 1, 2 notes named 2. These are different notes that have the same name. And then we have a bunch of other notes which have their own names. If I ask about how many links there are from notes, there are a bunch of notes that have 0 links, 4 notes that have 1 link, and 1 note that has 5 links. Tinderbox is assuming that since we're looking at numbers, these numbers are real numbers, and they aren't, but that's why we have these weird choices of 0 to half a link. They're all 0, but Tinderbox isn't being very clever about that. I have more options. I can limit this to notes with just a query. I can apply an action, can change the number of bins. So there's, again, this makes it clear that I've got most notes have few links, and 1 note has a bunch of links. As I said, attribute browser is worth its own day, and we should have a day of attribute browser.
By the way, when you're done, I've got a really great example of that I can show with populated data.
Excellent. Let's select B and take a look at the hyperbolic view. Okay. A hyperbolic view shows you all of the notes that are linked from the selected note. The central note, the selected note, is outlined in red. And this has the interesting property that as the notes get closer to the edge, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. If you think about large link networks, the number of links is likely to increase quite considerably as you get further out in the network, just because if you've got lots of notes and lots of links, most of them are always going to be at the edge. In fact, for really large networks, this increases exponentially, and the geometry of this space, hyperbolic geometry, is such that things get smaller at the same rate that the number of links is likely to get bigger. This is good for visualizing very large and complex link networks. As Mark Anderson always reminds me at this point, we need a way to choose which links are highlighted and which ones are used to construct the diagram. And that is coming. And we can also make notes. Here's our new note, which can be quite useful.
Where are you dragging from to create that?
How are you doing that?
The drag highlight is wrong. Just drag from B, for example.
Oh, okay.
And
Nice. And does that drop in the same container as B?
these are all going into the same container as B.
Okay.
Something else probably that another wrinkle is that you can you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think double click changes the red selected item to basically the thing that is now the center. So you can click on any note, and that note is shown on the right-hand pane. But if you want to basically change the focus of the view, and the other thing is, I don't know if we've got enough to show cross links in there. If you've got something like ATB ref and you throw it into hyperbolic view, you get unsurprisingly a hairball, which is sort of exactly what you asked for, but not necessarily tractable. Crosslinks is lovely because basically it takes, what it's trying to do is to make more of the sort of spider type diagram and showing the paths between parts of the document rather than showing every possible link between every possible note that you've actually created.
So if Mark, if you want to say something, go ahead. Your hand is up.
No, go ahead.
If I have a child in a container that's linked to a child in a different container, does that show up on here?
Yes, hyperbolic view doesn't care about containment.
Okay.
The other thing is, so it's links only. So if there are notes in the document that aren't linked to anything, or indeed aren't linked to any of the notes that are in the current graph, as it were, the diagram that you see, they're in the document, they just won't show on the view. So basically, this allows you to see everything that you can get to from this note via one or more hops, as it were, using only links. It doesn't matter which way the link is going, and it doesn't matter which way what the link type is. But so it's a link-centric view of the whole of the document.
Not of the part of the document that's been selected.
No, it's the whole document. So so again, it's to do with links. So basically, everything you see here can be reached from. I mean, the thing is, if we were to swap out this view, make another note that wasn't linked to anything, it will not appear when you switch back to hyperbolic view based on B, because you can't get to it via a link. So you can think of it in another sort of mapping, but it's where the links have primacy. Now, lots of people don't want or need links or use them in a different way. So often in a map, people are literally using them as a sort of drawing artifact and then using the link type as a drawing label, and that's fine. But if you are wanting to do a bit more sort of calculation about things, or finding, can I get from note A to note C? Or can I get from note A to note C via a link of this type? There are action codes that will do that as well. But this can be tremendously interesting. And also you can begin to see clustering in your document, for instance. So if you have an area where you've expanded out to lots of notes and the notes are linked. I'd also add that of the hierarchy, that this is something people may assume, but because a note has 10 children, if it doesn't link to them, the 10 children won't show on the hyperbolic view. So if you want it to be on the hyperbolic view, you explicitly have to link it. And it's nothing to do at all with the hierarchy. It's not to do with the map. It's just links. And very powerful if you need it. And if you don't worry about it.
So, and I'm not going to look at cross tabs because cross tabs is for something else, not this file isn't set up for it.
So Mark, I was going to say, as you've now sort of shown, I mean, I know you just said you won't show cross tabs, but one thing to bear in mind, so effectively, you've almost got sort of three types of things. So the first ones we looked at are, the chart, the map, the outline, the timeline, and the tree map. Essentially, they all just toggle between. The map's slightly different because it only shows you one part of the outline. All the others basically show you the whole outline, but you can hoist all the others. So you can make a timeline in any container, and a timeline looks downwards. You can double click in a tree map, so effectively hoist as you or demote as you can in an outline, so you can have a scoping. The other views, crosstabs and attribute browser, basically you decide, it's one of the controls in the top bar which defaults to the whole of the document, or you can choose any part of the outline, any container, as the sort of scope of the document, of the view. If you want more granularity in that, then that's really what the agent is for in both crosstabs and attribute browser. And once you've got that down, then you have all the richness of the view. It's tremendous. I used an absolute ton in my doctoral research. And the last thing is that hyperbolic view then sits on its own for the reasons already said, that it's basically all to do with links. It's always pan document, and it only works with notes that are linked within the current sort of from the current focus node. Mark.
Right. Yep. And here's crosstabs. So for example, let's say you have a note. This is the parent container, and you've got note 1, 2, 3, and there's numbers. And so like note 1, its tag is roses. Note 2, it's numbers 1, its tags as roses, poppy, roses and violet, etc. Then if you go look at it in crosstab, you can actually now see, well, how many notes are poppy? I've got 1 notes that are poppy. I've got 3 notes that are tagged roses. I've got 2 notes that are tagged violets. Note 4 is tagged, with this 1. And I don't remember, it's not actually an error. I can't remember why this is not saying 2, but I'll have to think about that. But it's not an error. I just don't remember why. But that's how you use crosstabs. And you can change your columns just to make this bigger. I can change like what my row versus what my column is going to be. I can decide, is this coming off the entire document? I can, decide, is this a count or a percentage? So there's some really powerful things, you can heat map it. So where are the bigger numbers happening? So really super powerful once you get an idea of how you want to do it. And you can also run queries on it as to do it, have it actually render through the query agent function to actually have that help you find your notes. So that's an example of an effective crosstab. Just to finish the dialogue, here is a really killer tree map or timeline. So, and I'll show you in this context. So one of the ideas here is, I've been out and about conducting research on private security software, particularly a concept called email aliasing, which is this utility that I can, rather than giving you my real email address, I generate a proxy email address, give you that. So that way, at any point in time, if you start spamming the hell out of me, I can, disable or stop receiving email from that alias, and I'm not, and you can, I never get those emails again. So it basically allows me to control my inbox. And it's very interesting as you start digging into this, and I didn't know this until I started doing the work, that there's a bunch of like projects happening around this. There's companies working on this. There are things. So over the last few years, every time I see an email aliasing project pop up, I stick it in the note, and I put in the start date, I put in the end date, I add details about that particular program. And so then I can put comments about it. I put tag it, organize like you typically would. And then when you jump to timeline, I now can always very quickly see in the concept of cybersecurity from email aliasing, there's been a lot going on from 1999 to 2022. And in fact, the first person to do it was probably either MailMote or Gmail. And introducing the concept of email aliasing as far back as 99. And you can just see the evolution of how that's been going and like who's still kind of current and doing it. And so this could be this is a really, really powerful way of visualizing data in a different and a new and unique context. So that's what the idea of aliasing is. And on the attribute browser, I'm going to take you back to my speaker demo we were doing earlier. And here's an example of running a query that says, go find me all of the notes descended from this particular note ID and only get me the speakers. And then I can go through and then organize it by the status, count me the status, and then sort it by last name. So here's the count over here. So now I can see, how many people are invited, or how many people don't have any, how many people are how many people are invited. So now I've just caught a spelling error that I hadn't seen before. And I can see there's 1 and 6. Then how many people are prospects? How many people are confirmed? And then the beautiful thing about this is these are all of the kind of operational things that I want to track. So once I get there, and I haven't had the time to go through this, But once I get there, and for like Visa, the woman from Visa, I can say, is she approved? Is she the approved? I can open these up to make it a little bit bigger. Is the title of her session approved? Do I have her on? These are all title. I can change these real quick. Oh yeah. Do I have her abstracts? Do I do? And then the way to manage this is you right mouse click there, and you can then pick which of the, so I don't need title approved twice, so I can go ahead and remove that. All right, so now I can say, is our title approved? Do we have the abstract approved? When's our session going to start and stop? Who's the sponsor of that session? So you can actually manage the matrix of all of the speakers in this environment very, very quickly. And if you want to, you can just go in here and change that, and change the values within those steps. So that's another tool of view. Yeah, go ahead.
I can show another couple of quick some mature docs if you want. Oh, just to share. Just to sing of sort of, here's one that's sort of finished. So if I go to one share, and you're seeing basically in here it's an outline view. This was me doing analysis of people on Wikipedia asking for help with bots and whether they were actually getting help. So there's a lot of quantitative work. So I would take an archive. I then had to account for the fact that the archiving is done by volunteers, so it has lots of typos and errors and duplicates. But then I would take take a conversation and work out who'd actually started it, who'd replied to it, how long it was until they'd received a reply, what the nature of the discussion was, whether there'd been an outcome, and all this sort of thing. For instance, if it was a conversation that resulted in a request to make a bot, then I'd link to that request. So there's a lot of sort of research type work, but this is just showing one at a late stage. I mean, this ended up in my thesis, but other stuff that you can do with the attribute browser, just akin to what Michael was showing you. But here I'm going through by tasks. Where attribute browser is really good is if you're encoding your data or tagging it, if you prefer, into sort of subtypes, especially if you basically want everything to be in one type. You can go through and then you can use attribute browser, and then you can start looking for the things with a really low count and thinking, okay, do I need to reclassify it? So if I go up to the top here, I should find that the numbers on the right hand side are getting smaller. So you're getting down to things where there are only 3 or 4 items. Now, it may be that these tags are valid and discrete from others, but often it's the way that when you've got thousands of items that you've actually got to code, it's not till you're halfway through the first run that you realize that actually you didn't use quite the right word. So attribute browser makes this really easy, because if I decided that accessibility wasn't a term, I've only got to find these 2 notes, go and change in this case, it's task set that we're looking at. If I then was to change that to one of the other, and you can see here all the other terms being used, then on refreshing this view, this group would disappear. And a useful little tip is, if you've got a large document like this with a lot of information in, if you want to prod Tinderbox to say, actually, I want to update this now and ahead of other things, if you just click on the top there, you notice that the title flash red, and that's actually Tinderbox just telling you, I'm busy updating the view, and lo and behold, it's updated. And you'll see that in both the examples that Michael and I have showed, we're actually using column view, which can make it extremely useful, because you can begin to see other information about it. And that's contingent to what you're looking at here. But you don't need to use columns at all. Just see if there's another. I did open another document quickly. Where has it gone? This was some work done for a paper last year. This is an analysis of about 33 years of the Hypertext Conference, where I basically pick up this thing. So what you're seeing here is once the work has been done, then I'm able to pull out all these sort of numbers, and I can go down into, let me just find where the conference has gone. So for instance, for a given conference, one of the things, for instance, we were trying to work out is the sort of gender split in terms of authors and paper first authors. But we can really get quite a lot of information that's broken out. And this is just stuff you don't normally see. People don't bother to do it because it's not done automatically. Publishers don't bother with it. So it's something you actually have to go and extract and count up. But you can just see from this how you can get quite rich data out of it. And this is done just as Michael was showing you earlier with action code that's generating all this text. So that's in this case, I think it's an edict that's running that's just generating everything you see there. Anyway, that's just a couple of sort of mature docs. So both the ones I've shown you are sort of end life now. But it's an idea of the sort of richness you can get to. And both those documents are probably in the order of high thousands of notes.
Awesome. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Who else wants to comments, thoughts, questions, summary? Anybody want to give us a summary? Or did we just overwhelm?
I couldn't summarize it, but I'll tell you this. It's remarkably beneficial for me to see a lot of the different facets of the Tinderbox jewel. Just trying to wrap your head around everything it's a lot to process. Those of you with deep expertise will remember, I suppose, what it's like to struggle up the curve. So these sort of bite-sized overviews are kind of helping me get context. And I appreciate everybody's sharing.
Yeah, I remember 2-3 years ago when Paul Walter said, "Well, just use regex," and I'm like, "Reg what?" So I mean, you certainly can get there. And there was a recent Harvard law. There was a January 2023 research study that suggested that we, in fact, all relatively, an analysis of students, and we learned that this one study proposed that we all learn at relatively consistent rates. But what they found is it takes 7 focused, basically homework sessions to ultimately get about 80% retention and knowledge of something. So, looking at like thousands and thousands of college students over across the United States, what they realized, you have to go through this at least 7 times, with a focused, concerted effort, with appropriate assignments and appropriate tutelage and appropriate reinforcements. Just reading it and assuming you're going to get it, it's not. You actually, and this is what the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour rule is actually a misnomer, in that you can't just do something for 10,000 hours and expect to get it. What Eckers did, and when he actually came up with it, he said is you need to break it into bite-sized chunks. It's not 10,000 hours in a row. It's like 10,000 hours spread over 90-minute to 3-hour chunks over periods of time. You then need to have so it needs to be smaller pieces spaced over time, and then with concerted feedback loops. And the closer the feedback loop can be to the activity, the faster you'll get the repurposing on it. So, if for those that are listening to this, if it's a bit overwhelming, it does take time, and it takes focus, and it takes repeated efforts for it to stick. And that's been proven with, learning research.
Michael, can you go back to your cross-tab example quickly in 30 seconds?
I can. I could see this being useful for your stuff in science.
And I have a request.
Yeah.
Can you put rows in the query?
Can I put rows in the query? What do you mean?
Up in the query, right there, just type rows. ROSE or violet.
Well, I
or
don't
what?
think so. This query is a Tinderbox query. So
Yeah, so how if I want to see just
tags,
violet or just roses?
tags equals rows. No, what am I doing wrong? Mr. Bernstein, what am I doing wrong here? I've never used queries in crosstab, so I'm not sure. Mr. Anderson?
It probably isn't, you probably, if you're asking for tags equals roses, but you haven't used this tag, so there probably is nothing, and I'm not sure it'll do across tabs of nothing.
Well, the tags is roses.
Oh,
So I'm not sure if I hit enter here, it's just disappearing. So I have to look, I'll have to look it up. So I don't know, Bill.
All right. that
oh,
was-
tags equals wouldn't match roses and violets. It's tags
Oh,
contains.
the tags contains. And maybe tags is string, tags.string.
Tags dot contains.
But it's a set, so it shouldn't be dot as a string first, but okay. No. When I hit enter,
You can
oh, no,
compare.
I see. I see. I'm hitting enter and it's putting in spaces. There's a lot there. Tags dot contains. Click away.
Return.
There you go. Got it. Sorry, I was absolute worker error.
Okay. Good. Thank you for
And
just
and what I was
clarifying.
doing wrong, so that people are watching this, is I was hitting enter, and what that was doing is putting spaces. I was thinking that I needed to hit enter for the query to save, and that was actually the error. So what I needed to do is type what I wanted to type and then click away for it to take effect. Cool. Thanks for that, Bill. That was good. That was a good ad.
Yep. Thanks.
Hey.
Go both ways.
Hey, one quick thing for all you ChatGPT fans out there. I don't know if you've seen Jordy Bruin's Mac GPT product. It throws up a little icon in the menu bar and allows you access to ChatGPT without having to break workflow and go into a browser. And it's just a fantastic implementation. That's only scratching the surface, by the way, of what it does. This guy is a wonder, and he is just cranking out release after release after release. It's clearly a labor of love. But if you haven't seen it, check it out if you use ChatGPT.
Can you throw the URL quickly into chat?
I did. It's there.
It's there.
Okay. I've been using, by the way, Merlin, which is a browser type interface to ChatGPT. And you just toggle pressing, pressing Command M, and for free, it gives you 51 queries a day.
Nice. Yeah, lots of neat stuff coming out there, but this thing for me is fantastic because I can't stand breaking focus. When I'm trying to answer a question, I've got to switch to a browser, and I'm bopping from window to window to window. I just start to lose my edge all over the place, and this is just a neat little thing. But don't want to devolve into that. But if you're using it, do give it a go.
Great. Well, I think we're at that hour.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Take care, all. Thank you.